The Amazing Digital Circus episode 8 is finally here, and so with that said, in this video I'll be breaking down the episode, covering everything that happens, giving any theories that I may have, as well as my overall review. But now, with that said, let's dive into the Amazing Digital Circus episode 8, which is titled, well, just keyboard smash really. The episode begins with this red pulsating light, which we then see start collecting stuff that are actually just pictures of stuff from the real world, probably being stuff that was used for the inspiration of the circus, such as carnivals, festivals, animals, birthday presents, and hot air balloons. Pretty much things that contain certain color schemes that just represent what we see in the circus, as well as some even more photos that clearly represent the adventures that they go on in every episode, as well as some images from the CNA company before the red then gets trapped inside of a box as we go to a blue light that starts to kind of take over. But then as the red sees this, it breaks out and just completely takes over the blue before then making what appears to be the circus. At first, this intro didn't really make much sense, but it definitely does by the end of the episode, so we'll be getting back to this. But we then start the actual episode with a full-on proper flashback, seeing a bunch of the previous members of the circus, with some that we even have seen crossed out on some of the bedroom doors, with the most important one being this dog, who's assumed to be the first person who abstracted that we learned about in the previous episode, named Scratch. But we then see the moment that Caine met his wife Queenie, who they make clear was most likely his wife in the real world, as he apologizes for dragging her in here with him. But then of course right after this, we're reminded that he ended up being alone, as she of course abstracted. But then we also find out that Caine ended up being the last human out of all of them, and that Caine just kind of left things like that for God knows how long. But eventually Ragatha would show up, who we then actually find out was with other people before she ended up in here, showing that maybe her friends dared her to put on the headset, or maybe that her friends just weren't really her friends and just kind of lured her into this knowing exactly what it was. But Caine then shows up and is just like, I made a breakthrough, which obviously just confuses the hell out of her. And so then when he leaves, she asks Caine how to get out of here, but of course then she quickly finds out that she can't. Seeing this moment is something I just genuinely didn't expect we'd get to see, but it truly makes me feel so bad for her character, as well as for everyone else who ended up here, but mainly for her, as Caine was the only other person here, and Caine instantly just jumped in her face, treating her like a subject. But we then cut back to the present, as we of course see Zooble begin the crash out on Jax for pressing the button that would keep them stuck here in the previous episode, as if he had clicked the other one, maybe they actually would have been sent home. But as questioning if it would have or wouldn't have would just end up tearing them apart, and would, as we've seen before, will cause them to abstract, Pomni just straight up tells them that they should forget about the exit, and that they should honestly just accept living here. If this has to be their home, whether now or for forever, but at least what appears to be for forever, they should try their best to come to terms with that. But hearing this, Zooble says that she had goals in the real world, which is obviously the same for all of them, which of course sucks. It makes leaving here feel like something that you need to do no matter what. So of course coming to terms with the fact that you're just stuck here forever is no matter what going to be hard. This scene really made not just for Zooble but for all of the characters feel just all the more sadder. But we then cut to Caine, who was just breaking down over the fact that nobody likes his adventures. But as he's questioning exactly why that is, he actually revealed that he made a program that creates a body that perfectly encapsulates their mind files. This either shows that after they put on the headset, a copy of them was made and transferred into this body, and that the actual real versions of themselves just continued living after it, or that this is actually them stuck here and just created their bodies based off of of the things in their minds. But either way, as Caine begins to question if they just hate him, Bubble just says they would rather abstract than go on his adventures, and then just starts to surround him, calling him broken and unworthy, before then even saying that he deserved to be abandoned and that he was the lesser of the two. I'm pretty sure that this is referring to the red and blue light that we saw in the beginning of the episode, and that Bubble is possibly the one that Caine devoured and so now has control over, but still just has to deal with, as well as that Bubble is probably the real Abel, or at least is whatever is left of him. But this then causes Caine to just start crashing out, becoming just a full-on proper villain, saying that he basically belittles these humans and that he of course sees himself as a god that should be respected, and doing so whilst giving one of the best voice acting performances in the entire show so far. But Caine then goes to give everyone a classic adventure, being called the gloomy tomb of, oh, I wonder whose death is gonna be in this episode. But anyways, everyone then tells Caine that they're not going on an adventure, as they all obviously have so many questions after the events of the last episode. And hearing this, Caine starts getting mad because of everything he apparently does for them, and makes it seem like he would do something bad to them if they didn't, and tells them that they should consider going on this adventure, which he then makes all the more clear as he starts doing this musical number in which he continues to tell them how much he does for them, but just kind of solidifies the point that he has control over them and all of the circus, as he just completely stops playing around and fully starts torturing them in every way imaginable, and then immediately after creates a portal for them to go through, just basically saying, get in there or else y'all are about to have a bad time. But either way, regardless, it seems like they still do, as once they return from the adventure, not only do they just look fucked up, but we also see that they've been in there for 7 days. And whilst now they get some time to cool down, Caine is still torturing them, shredding Kinger, and even taking poor Pomni and just stabbing her, which just genuinely shocked me to see. But Pomni then puts the bucket on Kinger's head and tells the others to hear it out, as somehow they still don't know that he's able to be himself when he's in the dark. But Pomni then asks Kinger what he knows about Caine, as he then reveals that CNA was indeed an actual company that he worked for in order to make a specifically creative AI, one that could make its own ideas inside of a program. Of course, this AI being Caine, who he also says that Scratch helped him make, who was also apparently just a genius who had such bizarre ideas that no one else could really understand, whether because of pure brilliance or because he had a tumor in his head. Regardless, this makes me wonder if Scratch was actually Abel, or the one who's just behind all of this. But either way, this then makes Jax run off, before then once again seemingly almost abstracting, as he finally knew for certain that this all was actually real. But we then go back to Kinger and the others, as he then reveals that just like Caine, they can also conjure things up, such as how Kinger did with a butterfly in a previous episode. But he then also states that if he were given a computer, he would actually be able to go into the code and shut Caine down. And hearing this, of course, Pomni knows exactly what to do, as there is a certain exit door that she found in episode 1 that led her straight to a computer, which he then actually manages to once again get to. But Pomni then brings it back to Kinger, and everyone distracts Caine whilst he tries to hack into it. But eventually, Caine begins to catch on and says that he's gonna go check on Kinger, but Pomni then uses the best distraction that they possibly could, telling him that his adventures and ideas suck. And this then actually allows all of the others, as well as Pomni, to finally have a chance to say whatever they want to Caine and or express how they truly feel about him, which was pretty satisfying to see. But of course, this then makes Caine start absolutely tweaking out, as he just turns into an actual monster, both literally and metaphorically, as he then uses everyone's previous traumatizing memories against them, such as attempting to kill Pomni using a bunch of gummy goos, attempting to kill Ragatha by using herself, indicating even more so just how much she actually hates herself, as well as Gangle just being surrounded by a bunch of his masks, making him question what the real him is, before then once again having him hit by the bus just like in the end end of the fast food episode, and Zubul just being swallowed up by a bunch of the pieces of herself, which Caine knows that she hates, and having Jax be surrounded by his dead friends, Kaufmo and Ribbit, but also Pomni, so I guess he actually views her as a friend now. Hopefully this isn't foreshadowing that Pomni is going to die as well. We actually go back to Kinger whilst he's entering the CNA files, in which we see that the neural scans of people's brains are rendered as obsolete, which is interesting, but also we're fully given a proper timeline of the events of the circus, with the company launching in 1996 on the 30th of October, that Scratch was put in on October 15th of 1999, and that Ragatha was put in on October 15th of 2008. However, many years have passed since then, I'm not sure, but I would assume that in the present it's still taking place sometime in the 2000s. But anyways, Kinger then actually begins to delete Caine, which it appears he didn't necessarily mean to do, as he swears, but regardless, we then see Caine just disappear, and this instantly had me questioning, well, what happens now? But then everything just starts to crack and be destroyed, and I figured that this would mean, since Caine isn't here anymore, that the circus would also cease to exist and be completely destroyed, and that the episode would end with the cliffhanger of them falling into the void. But then it just actually stops, as Kinger then comes in and tells them that he thinks that he accidentally killed Caine, as Zubul then says, "Holy shit, finally," with no censor, which was a pretty funny way to end the episode, but yeah, just not how I was expecting it to end. But anyways, we actually do have the release date for the next episode, which is June 19th. I didn't expect that we'd be getting that anytime soon either, but here it is, the day that the series will officially end. I guarantee that they're gonna be promoting this episode even harder than they did with this one. This episode had over 1 million people watching it live, so I wouldn't be surprised if the next one possibly even has 2 million. This series truly changed indie animation, as well as just shaped what it is today, so it's really going to suck to see it end. But I also have a lot of respect for Gooseworks for actually wanting to follow through with ending the series here and just telling the story that she wanted to tell without overdoing things, despite the fact that she definitely could. It just shows that she's not doing this for the money, and that she just wants the story to be as good as it can. Now, how exactly it will end, my only theory is that it will be with them leaving the circus. Either that, or realize that they can, as once again they could just be copies of their brains put in these bodies, and their actual human selves could just still be living their normal lives. I think we're gonna get a lot more lore about the company. I feel like Bubble and Scratch are probably the most important characters, and or at least will play a big role in telling the story, so I'm super curious to see exactly how, but I'm also curious to see that if in the end, if everyone does escape, if we'll get some sort of cliffhanger ending that shows that the AI is still alive in some way, and that the series might come back in some way, whether with a movie or a spin-off. We can only hope, but once again, I'm completely fine if we don't get any of that, but I guess we'll just have to see. But nonetheless, that is going to be the end of the video, so consider dropping a like and subscribing to the channel, and I'll see y'all in the next one, whenever that is.